My name is Elsbeth Crowley. I am 78 years old. I have lived most of my life in a quiet corner of Maple Hollow, a small town tucked between long cornfields and a slow brown river in the Midwest. People here wave even when they do not know your name. The streets go silent after 9 p.m., and the loudest sound at night is usually the wind brushing against old trees or the distant whistle of a freight train. I am a retired school librarian. For 32 years I shelved books, wiped dusty covers, and helped children learn how to love stories. I raised 2 sons. One of them is gone now. The other one, my youngest, is named Aldrich. He is the reason my heart still beats as hard as it does. That night, I was asleep in my recliner. I sleep there most nights now because my back aches too much for the bed. The television was on low, showing some late-night rerun I had already forgotten. My knitting lay in my lap, half-finished like many things in my life. Then the phone rang. Not my cell phone. A house phone. Rang once. I remember thinking, who on earth calls a landline at 2 in the morning? My heart started pounding before I even picked it up. I answered with a sleepy hello, my voice thin and shaky. But no one spoke. All I heard was breathing. Heavy. Uneven. Then a voice I knew far too well said my son's name. Aldrich. My father-in-law's voice. Bramwell Thorne. Even at my age, hearing that man's voice still made my stomach twist. I sat up straight. My bones protested, but fear pushed past the pain. Why are you calling here, Bramwell? I asked. He laughed softly. Not a warm laugh. Never that. His laugh always sounded like something breaking. I already called Aldrich, he said. He answered. Good boy. Just like I raised him. My mouth went dry. What did you say to my husband? I asked. There was a pause. Just long enough to hurt. I told him the truth about you. My hands began to shake so badly I nearly dropped the phone. What truth? I whispered. Another pause. Then his voice dropped low. I told him what you did all those years ago. And I told him why you do not deserve him. My chest tightened. It felt like someone had tied a rope around my ribs and pulled. You have no right, I said. You promised. You promised you would never say anything. He chuckled again. Promises are for people with power, Elsbeth. And you lost yours a long time ago. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. What exactly did you tell him? I asked. He sighed, almost bored. Enough to make him look at you differently. Enough to make him decide. Decide what? I asked. Whether he still wants to be married to a woman who built her life on a lie. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my reflection faint in the dark screen. An old woman with gray hair, thin lips, and eyes that had seen too much. I tried calling Aldrich back. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I sat there in the dark, the television still murmuring nonsense, my heart beating like it wanted to escape my chest. That man. After all these years. After all my silence. He had finally done it. And the worst part was not the fear. It was the shame. Because part of what he said was true. Before I go any further, let me pause right here. If you enjoy deep, emotional stories about family, secrets, and quiet strength, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Like this video, turn on your notification bell, and stay with me for stories that will make you feel, think, and remember. And please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Which state? Which town? I want to know who is sitting with me tonight. Now let me take you back. Because that phone call did not begin at 2 a.m. It began more than 50 years ago. I met Bramwell Thorne the first time I ever stepped onto his land. I was 26 then. Young. Proud. Newly married. I thought love could protect me from anything. Bramwell owned acres of farmland just outside of Maple Hollow. His house was tall and narrow, painted white once, now yellowed by time. He had eyes like cold marbles and a way of looking at you like he was measuring what you were worth. My husband at the time, Hollis, was his only son. Hollis was gentle. Too gentle for a father like Bramwell. From the start, Bramwell made it clear I did not belong. "You read too much," he once said, watching me hold a book at the dinner table. "Women who read get ideas. Ideas ruin families." Hollis said nothing. That should have been my first warning. Years passed. I learned how to stay quiet, how to make myself small, how to swallow words before they escaped my mouth. Then Hollis died. A tractor accident. That is what the town said. That is what the report said. Bramwell never cried. He only looked at me and said, "Now you really owe me." I stayed on the farm longer than I should have. I had 2 young sons and nowhere to go. Bramwell controlled everything. The money, the land, even the way people in town looked at me. And then came the night that changed everything. The night I buried a secret so deep I almost forgot it had a heartbeat. But Bramwell never forgot. Men like him never do. I eventually left the farm, took my boys, started over. I rebuilt my life one careful brick at a time. Became a librarian. Became respected. Became invisible. Years later, Aldrich grew up and married a woman who reminded me of who I used to be before fear shaped me. Life felt calm. Until that call. Until 2 a.m. Until Bramwell decided it was time for the truth, or at least his version of it, to come out. I sat alone that night, waiting for Aldrich to call me back. The clock ticked louder than it ever had before. 2:17 a.m. 2:34 a.m. 3:01 a.m. Every minute felt like a judgment. Finally my phone lit up. Text. From Aldrich. "We need to talk. I'm coming over in the morning." My fingers trembled as I set the phone down. Morning. I looked around my living room. The family photos on the wall. My late husband's chair. The quilt I made from my children's old clothes. Everything suddenly felt fragile. Because by morning the life I had built might crack. And I did not know if it would survive the truth Bramwell had dragged out of the dark. Stay with me. Because what he told my husband was only the beginning. And what I chose to do next would change all of our lives forever. Morning came too fast. I did not sleep. I sat in my recliner all night, staring at the window as the darkness slowly turned gray. Every sound made me jump. The refrigerator humming. The house settling. Car passing on the road outside. I kept hearing Bramwell's voice in my head. "I told him the truth about you." By the time the sun finally rose, my eyes burned and my body felt hollow, like something vital had been scooped out of me. At 7:12 a.m., I heard a car pull into my driveway. I did not need to look to know who it was. Aldrich, my son, my last child. I stood slowly, holding onto the arm of the chair until my knees stopped shaking. I smoothed my gray hair back, though my hands would not behave. I glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror. My face looked older than it had the day before. Tired, afraid. The knock came softly. Not the knock of an angry man. Not yet. It was the knock of someone who did not know what he was about to do. "Open the door." Aldrich stood there in a dark jacket. His hair still damp from the shower. His eyes were red, not from sleepiness, but from something heavier. He did not hug me. That hurt more than I expected. "Good morning, Mom," he said. His voice was careful. Too careful. "Good morning," I replied. He stepped inside, looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. The bookshelves. The framed photos. The crocheted blanket folded neatly on the couch. "This place always smelled like home," he said quietly. I swallowed. We sat across from each other. The coffee table between us felt like a wall. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit he had since he was a boy. "Dad called me last night," he said. He nodded. "No." He looked up sharply. "You knew he called me." "He called me first," I said. After. Silence settled between us. "What did he tell you?" he asked. Aldrich leaned back, exhaled slowly. "He told me things I never knew. Things I wish I did not know." My chest tightened. "Such as?" He looked straight at me then. "He said you lied about how my father died." The room seemed to tilt. I did not answer right away. "He said you were responsible," Aldrich continued. "That you pushed Hollis to work that field late at night, even though the tractor had problems. That you wanted the insurance money." My hands curled into fists. "That is not true," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know that now. Or at least I think I do. But that is not all," he said. I felt a familiar dread crawling up my spine. "He said you stayed with him after Dad died because you owed him. Because of what happened between you and him." My breath caught. "I owe him nothing," I whispered. He leaned forward. What happened between you and Grandpa?" There it was. The question I had avoided for over 50 years. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside at the quiet street. Children would be walking to school soon. Life moving on, unaware of the storm inside this small house. "You deserve the truth," I said. "But you are not going to like it." He said he could handle it. I smiled sadly. Everyone says that before the truth sits down beside them. I turned back to him. "Your grandfather was not a good man, Aldrich." He scoffed softly. "I know he was strict, cold, but a monster." Closed my eyes. "When I married your father, I thought love would soften him. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, he would accept me. He never did." I told Aldrich about the farm, about the isolation, about the way Bramwell controlled everything, from money to meals to moods. And then I told him about the night Hollis did not come home. "Your father was supposed to be home by sundown," I said. "The tractor had been acting up for weeks. I begged him not to go out that night. But Bramwell insisted." Aldrich's jaw tightened. He always pushed Dad too hard. That night, I continued, I heard the phone ring. Bramwell answered it. He did not let me listen. When he hung up, he told me Hollis had been in an accident. A tractor accident. That is what everyone said. But that is not what happened. Aldrich stood up slowly. "What do you mean?" I looked at him, my son, the man I raised to be gentle, and I knew this would change him forever. "Your father and Bramwell had a fight that night," I said. "Terrible one. Hollis wanted to sell the farm. He wanted us to leave. Bramwell lost control." Aldrich's face went pale. "He shoved Hollis," I said. "Hard." Hollis fell. Hit his head on the metal edge of the tractor. I heard it happen. I was there. The room went silent. Aldrich stared at me like I had spoken in another language. You watched him die," he whispered. "No," I said quickly. "He was alive. Barely. I tried to help him. I screamed for help. Bramwell stood there, cold as stone. He told me if I said anything he would take my boys. That no one would believe a hysterical woman over a respected landowner. He told me I owed him my silence. My voice broke. And I believed him." Aldrich sank back onto the couch. "You let him get away with it." Flinched. "I survived," I said. "I protected you and your brother. I did what I had to do." He buried his face in his hands. "All my life," he said, "I thought Grandpa was just mean. I never knew he was capable of something like that." I walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. He did not pull away, but he did not lean into it either. After Hollis died, I said, Bramwell controlled the insurance money. He controlled the land. He controlled us. And one night, he crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Aldrich looked up. What line? I swallowed. He came into my room. Aldrich's eyes widened. Well, he nodded. Said no. Begged. He told me I already owed him everything. I stayed silent for decades, Aldrich. Not because I was weak, but because I was trapped. He stood suddenly, pacing the room. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because you were a child, I said. And because fear does not disappear just because time passes. He stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked at me. Dad said you built your life on a lie. I shook my head. I built my life on survival. He said you do not deserve your peace. I straightened my shoulders. Peace is not something men like Bramwell give or take. It is something women like me earn. Aldrich's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. It was from Bramwell. He wants to meet, Aldrich said. He says there is more you are not telling me. My heart sank. There is always more, I said. That is how men like him keep their power. Aldrich clenched his jaw. I want to hear him say it, Mom. To my face. I want to look him in the eye. Fear surged through me. Do not go alone, I said. I am not a child anymore, he replied. No, I said softly. You are my child forever. He hesitated. Come with me, he said. I stared at him. I am 78 years old. My bones ache. My heart is tired. But my silence was heavier than my age. All right, I said. I will come. We drove in silence back toward the old farm. The fields were still there. The house too. Older. More worn. Like the man inside it. Bramwell stood on the porch when we arrived, leaning on a cane like he was the fragile one now. He smiled when he saw me. You look well, Elsbeth, he said. All things considered. I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, fear was not the loudest thing in my chest. Something else was growing. Resolve. He invited us inside. The same walls. The same smell. Time had not softened this place. Sit, he said. We did not. Aldrich spoke first. Tell me everything, he said. Or this ends today. Bramwell laughed. You think you get to decide how this ends? I stepped forward. Actually, I do. Bramwell's smile faded. I told Aldrich everything, I said. Every lie you forced me to live with. Every threat. Every night I stayed silent to keep my children safe. Bramwell's eyes darkened. You forget yourself, Elsbeth. No, I said. I remember myself. Aldrich looked between us. Is it true? He asked Bramwell. Did you kill my father? Bramwell's lips pressed into a thin line. Accidents happen, he said. Men get angry. Things get out of hand. That was all the confirmation we needed. Aldrich's hands shook. You destroyed our family, he said. Bramwell shrugged. Families are destroyed by weak women who cannot keep their mouths shut. Something inside me snapped. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Kept records, Bramwell, I said. Letters. Old bank statements. A journal. Names of people who knew more than they admitted. Bramwell's eyes widened for the first time. You would not dare. Smiled. I dared to survive you. This is easy. Aldrich stared at the folder. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked at my son, then back at the man who had haunted my life. I am done being quiet, I said. And that was the moment Bramwell realized he had lost. But he was not done fighting. Not yet. And neither was I. We left the farm without another word. Bramwell stood on the porch as we walked away. His shoulders stiff, his mouth tight. For the first time I saw something unfamiliar in him. Not anger. Not control. Fear. The drive back to Maple Hollow felt longer than it ever had. The road curved through fields that once felt endless to me. When I was young, those fields felt like walls. Now they felt like witnesses. Aldrich did not speak. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. I watched his face from the passenger seat. He looked like a man trying to hold two worlds together in his head. The one he grew up believing in, and the one he had just stepped into. I broke the silence. "You are angry with me." He did not deny it. "I am angry at everything," he said. "Him. What he did. What he took from us. And yes, Mom, you." He nodded. "You are allowed to be." He glanced at me, surprised. "Most parents would argue. Defend themselves. I have defended myself my whole life," I said. "I am tired of that. You deserve honesty, even if it hurts." He slowed the car as we passed the old grain elevator, rusted and leaning. "All those years," he said quietly. "All those holidays, birthdays." He was sitting at the table with us. "No." And I let it happen. He pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine. The quiet was heavy. "Why now?" he asked. Why did he decide to say something now? "Because men like Bramwell cannot stand being forgotten," I said. "He is old. His body is failing. Control is slipping through his fingers. Exposing me was his last way to feel powerful." Aldrich leaned back in his seat. "He's dying, Mom." Closed my eyes. "So is everyone in their own time." We sat there for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. The question startled me. "Me. This is your story. Pain. I need to know what you want." I thought of the nights I cried silently into my pillow. The years I swallowed words like broken glass. The life I built piece by piece after escaping that farm. "I want peace," I said. "Real peace. Not silence mistaken for it." He nodded slowly. "Then we need to be careful. He still has friends. People who believe his version of things." I smiled faintly. "Do I?" Aldrich looked at me. "What do you mean?" I reached for my purse and pulled out a small notebook. Worn. Brown. The edges soft from time. "This," I said, "is my memory." He frowned. "You kept a diary." "Not every day. Only when I was afraid I would forget who I really was." I opened it to a page yellowed with age. I wrote names, I said. Conversations. Things I could not say out loud. Aldrich took it carefully like it might break. "You planned this." I shook my head. "I survived it." Planning implies confidence. Had none. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning my handwriting. "There are people here I recognize," he said. "Old neighbors. Doctor. Mechanic. People who saw bruises. Who heard arguments. Who asked questions and were told to mind their business." Aldrich looked up. "Do you think any of them would talk now?" He sighed. "Some might. Some will pretend they remember nothing." Fear ages differently in everyone. That afternoon, Aldrich left to return to his own home. He needed time. Ace. Understood. I sat alone in my living room, the house too quiet again. That night the phone rang. Not at 2 a.m. This time it was just after dinner. I knew before answering. "Bramwell." I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "What do you want?" he asked. "You have stirred things that should have stayed buried," he said. I smiled to myself. Buried things rot. He inhaled sharply. "You think you have power now. You do not." I leaned back in my chair. "You called my husband in the middle of the night to hurt me. You already showed me your last move." There was silence. "You will regret this," he said finally. "I already regret a lifetime, Bramwell. Do your worst." Hung up. My hands were steady. That scared me more than fear ever had. The next few days passed slowly. Aldrich called often, sometimes just to sit in silence on the line with me. Other times to ask questions he was not ready to hear the answers to. Then something unexpected happened. A woman named Maribel Knox knocked on my door. She was in her early 80s, tall, thin, with hair the color of winter. I recognized her immediately. She had lived 2 farms over from Bramwell decades ago. "I heard what is happening," she said, her voice low. I did not invite her in right away. "How did you hear?" "Yes. Small towns remember things when they think it is safe." I stepped aside. She sat on my couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I should have said something back then," she said. "We all should have." My throat tightened. "Why now?" "Because I am tired of being afraid of a man who is nearly gone." She looked at me. "He hurt you." "We knew. We just pretended not to." Tears slid down my face before I could stop them. "Thank you," I whispered. "For saying that." She nodded. "If you speak, I will speak." After she left, 2 more calls came over the next week. Old names, old voices, people who remembered more than they ever admitted. The town was shifting. Bramwell noticed. Aldrich told me Bramwell had called him again. This time his voice was different. "Panic." "He wants to settle," Aldrich said. Quietly. I laughed softly. There is no quiet left. But the most difficult moment came when Aldrich's wife, Lenora, came to see me. She sat where Aldrich had sat days earlier. "I'm sorry," she said. "I did not know how deep this went." He nodded. "Most people do not until they are standing in it." She reached for my hand. "Whatever happens, I want you to know I believe you." That simple sentence healed something in me I did not know was still broken. But peace does not come without resistance. The letter arrived on a Friday morning. Legal letterhead. Bramwell was accusing me of defamation, trying to scare me back into silence. I handed it to Aldrich when he arrived that afternoon. He read it, then looked up at me. "He still thinks you are alone." Smiled. "Then let him stay wrong." That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something that surprised me. I was no longer afraid of what would happen next. I was afraid of what would not happen if I stopped now. Bramwell Thorne had always believed time was on his side. Even now, with his hands trembling and his breath coming short, he believed age gave him authority. He believed his years made him untouchable. Men like him confuse survival with righteousness. I learned that the week after the letter arrived. Aldrich came over one afternoon carrying groceries and worry in equal measure. He set the bags on the counter but did not unpack them. "He is not backing down, Mom," he said. "He has hired a lawyer from the city." I stirred a pot of soup slowly, the steam rising to my face. I expected that. He rubbed his forehead. "He is claiming memory loss on some things. On others, he is calling you unstable, grief-stricken, manipulative." I laughed once. Dark. Course he is." Aldrich frowned. "How can you laugh?" "Because he is doing exactly what men like him always do when they feel cornered. They make women sound crazy." I turned off the stove and faced my son. "Let me tell you something, Aldrich. When a man accuses an old woman of lying, it is rarely because she is lying. It is because she is finally speaking. That evening something happened I did not expect. I dreamed. I had not dreamed clearly in years. Nightmares, yes. Shadows. But not a full dream. In it I was young again. Standing in the barn. The smell of oil and hay thick in the air. Hollis was there, alive, smiling at me the way he used to when Bramwell was not around. "You stayed," he said gently. He nodded. "Had to." He took my hands. "You stayed long enough." I woke up crying. But the tears felt different. Lighter. The next morning, Aldrich told me Bramwell wanted a meeting. One last conversation. He claimed his health was failing. He wanted closure. I stared out the window at the autumn leaves beginning to fall. Closure, I said. That word always sounds better to the one who caused the damage. Do you want to go? Aldrich asked. Thought for a long time. We met him at a small attorney's office in the next town over. Neutral ground, they said. Bramwell sat in a leather chair, a blanket over his legs, a cane resting against his knee. He looked smaller than I remembered. Frail. But his eyes were the same. Dark. Calculating. Elsbeth, he said. You look tired. I sat across from him. I am tired of you, I replied. The lawyer cleared his throat. Let us keep this respectful. Bramwell waved him off. Leave us. The lawyer hesitated, then stepped outside. Aldrich stayed standing behind my chair. Bramwell leaned forward. You do not have to do this, he said quietly. We can make it all go away. I tilted my head. You cannot erase truth once it has air. He smiled thinly. Can still ruin you. I met his gaze. You already tried. His voice dropped. I gave you everything. I almost laughed. You gave me fear, silence, and a lifetime of swallowing pain. If that is everything, you can keep it. He slammed his cane against the floor. You would have had nothing without me. I leaned in closer. I built a life without you. That is what you cannot forgive. His breathing grew labored. You think people will remember you kindly? Yes. After this. They will whisper. They will judge. I straightened. Let them. I am done living for other people's comfort. Something shifted in his face. For a brief second I saw panic again. What do you want? Yes. Understood. I want you to tell the truth. Publicly. Or I will. Aldrich placed a hand on my shoulder. Bramwell laughed, a dry, rattling sound. You think anyone will believe an old woman over me? I smiled sadly. They already are. I walked out. 2 days later, the article ran in the local paper. Did not name names directly. It spoke of long-buried violence on farms, of women silenced by power and fear, of towns that looked away. People knew. The calls began again. Messages of support. Some apologies. Some confessions. Bramwell's lawyer withdrew. His friends stopped visiting. And then came the call I never expected. From Bramwell himself. I am sick, he said. Really sick. Closed my eyes. No. He hesitated. I do not want to die like this. I said nothing. Tell them, Elsbeth, he whispered. Tell them I was not all bad. I felt a wave of pity rise, then fall. That is not my job anymore. He hung up. A week later, he was moved into a care facility. The irony was not lost on me. The man who controlled every inch of land ended his days in a small room with white walls and a single window. Aldrich asked if I wanted to visit him. No, I said. My presence is not his comfort. As winter settled in, I felt something new take root. Not revenge. Release. But the story was not finished. Because what Bramwell took from me all those years ago was more than peace. Winter arrived quietly that year. Snow fell in soft layers over Maple Hollow, smoothing the rough edges of the town the way time tries to smooth the sharp parts of memory. The trees outside my window stood bare and honest. No leaves to hide behind. I liked that about winter. Nothing pretended to be more than it was. I spent most mornings at my kitchen table with a cup of weak coffee and my old notebook open in front of me. The one Aldrich had seen. The one that carried the weight of my past. But now I was not writing about fear. I was remembering things I had buried on purpose. Not because they hurt, but because they reminded me of who I used to be before survival became my only skill. I remembered laughter. I remembered singing while hanging laundry. I remembered the woman I was before Bramwell taught me to disappear. One afternoon, while sorting through an old box in the hall closet, I found something unexpected. Stack of letters. They were tied with a faded blue ribbon, the edges soft, the paper yellowed. I sat down on the floor right there and untied them with shaking fingers. They were from Hollis. Not the bills. Not farm records. Personal letters. He had written them during the early years of our marriage, when Bramwell was still traveling for farm business and we had moments of peace. I had forgotten these existed. My dearest Elsbeth, if I do not say this out loud, I am afraid it will die inside me. I pressed the paper to my chest. In those letters, Hollis apologized for his silence, for not standing up to his father, for letting fear make him small. I was weak, he wrote, but my love for you was real even when my courage failed me. Tears fell onto the page. For decades, I had carried anger toward a dead man. Anger that kept me upright when grief would have broken me. Now I saw him clearly, not as a villain, but as a man crushed under the weight of another. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. And I dreamed again. This time I was not in the barn. I was in a wide open field, tall grass moving in the wind. Hollis stood at the edge of it, smiling. You kept going, he said. I woke with a strange sense of calm. The next morning Aldrich called. Mom, he said, I found something. His voice was tight. What is it? Dad's old union papers. Pension records. There are discrepancies. My heart skipped. Discrepancies. There are withdrawals made right after his death. Large ones. Signed over to Bramwell. Closed my eyes. He stole from him too, I said softly. Aldrich exhaled sharply. I am taking this to an attorney. Not to punish him, but to set the record straight. Something warm spread through my chest. You do not have to do that for me. I am doing it for myself, Aldrich replied. And for Dad. The investigation moved quietly at first. Paperwork. Questions. Follow-ups. Then, one afternoon, a young woman named Therese called me. She introduced herself as a social worker assigned to Bramwell's care facility. I hesitated before answering her questions. He has been asking about you, she said gently. Felt nothing. He says there are things he wants to correct before he dies. I stared at the wall. Correction is not repentance. He paused. He also mentioned land. A small parcel he claims was always meant for you. My breath caught. Land. A section by the river. He says it was promised to you after Hollis passed. I laughed softly, bitterly. He promised me many things. Still, the idea lodged itself in my mind. A few days later, Aldrich brought the official documents. It was true. Bramwell had kept a portion of land in my name. Never transferred, never spoken of. Quiet hold. Control even in silence. The river parcel was small. Overgrown. Forgotten. I asked Aldrich to take me there. Snow crunched beneath our boots as we walked along the narrow path. The river moved slowly. Dark water cutting through white banks. It was beautiful. This could be something, Aldrich said. He nodded. Not for money. Not for power. For meaning. I stood there a long time, listening to the water. For the first time, the farm did not feel like a prison. Felt like something reclaimed. That evening I made a decision. I would donate the land. Not back to the town. Not to anyone who had looked away. To women. Small retreat space. Quiet. For women who had survived what I had survived. When I told Aldrich, he smiled. That sounds like you. As winter deepened, Bramwell's condition worsened. Therese called again. He is asking to see you. Said no. Then she said something that stopped me. He is afraid. I was afraid once too. After a long night of thought, I agreed. I visited him on a Tuesday afternoon. He lay in a narrow bed, skin thin, eyes sunken. He looked at me like a child caught doing something terrible. "You came," he whispered. I stood at the foot of the bed. "Say what you need to say." His voice shook. "I was wrong. I waited. About everything. I waited longer. You ruined lives, Bramwell." He nodded, tears sliding down the sides of his face. "No." Silence filled the room. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "Forgiveness is not a gift I owe you." His shoulders slumped. "But I release you," I continued. "From my life. From my fear." He closed his eyes. "That is more than I deserve." I left without looking back. He passed away 3 weeks later. There was no funeral I attended. No tears I shed. But something inside me shifted. The past no longer felt like a chain. Felt like a chapter. Spring came slowly, like it was unsure whether Maple Hollow deserved another chance. The snow melted into mud, then into green. The river by the forgotten parcel swelled and softened, carrying branches, leaves, and pieces of winter away. Each time Aldrich drove me there, I felt lighter, as if something inside me was finally moving again. Word spread faster than I expected. Not gossip. Not whispers. Respect. Women from neighboring towns began reaching out. Some through Aldrich. Some through letters left in my mailbox with no return address. They wrote about husbands who controlled, fathers who scared, lives lived quietly to survive. I read every letter. Some nights, I cried until my chest hurt. Other nights, I sat very still, realizing I was no longer alone in my memories. Aldrich helped me form a small board. Nothing official at first. Just people who cared. A retired nurse. Former teacher. A widow who knew how to build with her hands. We stood on the riverland one chilly morning, boots sinking into soft earth. "What do you see?" Aldrich asked. Closed my eyes. "I see quiet rooms," I said. "Windows that face the water. A place where women can sleep without fear of being woken by anger." The nurse nodded. "Place to breathe." We worked slowly. There was no rush. I had spent my whole life rushing to survive. This time I wanted to move with intention. The town council approved the donation without resistance. That surprised me. Then again, times were changing. Or maybe people were just tired of carrying other people's silence. One afternoon, while sorting paperwork at my kitchen table, I found myself smiling at nothing. Startled me. I had forgotten what it felt like to smile without guilt. Then came the doubt. It crept in quietly like it always had. Who am I to lead this? I wondered. I am old. I am tired. I am damaged. That night, I dreamed of Bramwell again. But this time he was small, distant, standing on the far side of the river, unable to cross. I woke knowing the doubt was not mine. It was leftover fear. Kept going. Construction began in early summer. Modest buildings. Nothing fancy. Would light warmth. Women volunteered. Some brought food. Some brought tools. Some brought stories they had never spoken aloud before. I listened. For once, I did not carry their pain. I held space for it. Aldrich visited often, sometimes with Lenora, sometimes alone. "You look younger," he told me once. I laughed. "Do not lie to your mother." "I'm serious," he said. "You stand differently now." I realized he was right. My shoulders no longer curved inward. My voice did not shrink at the end of sentences. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the river gold, a young woman named Hazel sat beside me on a bench. "I do not belong here," she said softly. "Why do you think that?" I asked. Because what happened to me was not as bad as what happened to others. I took her hand. Pain is not a competition. And healing is not reserved for those who suffered the most. She cried then, openly, without apology. In that moment I understood something deeply. Bramwell had taken my silence. But he had never taken my capacity to nurture. I had simply forgotten it was still there. The retreat opened quietly. No ceremony. No speeches. Just doors unlocked and lights turned on. The first night 3 women stayed. I did not sleep much. I walked the halls slowly, listening to the sound of peaceful breathing. For the first time in decades, night did not scare me. Months passed. The town adjusted. Some people avoided me. Others greeted me with warmth I had not known before. One day, a man approached me outside the grocery store. "I recognize you," he said. "From the farm." I stiffened. "I was a boy then," he continued. "I heard things. I wish I had spoken." I looked at him. "You speaking now matters." He nodded, eyes wet. "Thank you for showing us it is not too late." That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket over my knees and thought about legacy. Not money. Not property. But courage. Bramwell's name would fade. Already people spoke of him less. His shadow shrank with each passing day. Mine did not need to be large. It only needed to be true. But life does not allow peace without testing it. Late one afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a single sentence. "You destroyed a good man's name." My hands trembled. For a moment the old fear stirred. Then I folded the letter and placed it in the fire. Some people need villains to avoid looking at themselves. I would not carry that for them. That evening Aldrich called. "Mom," he said, "I have been offered a job in another state." My heart skipped. "That is wonderful." He hesitated. "I'm afraid to leave you." Smiled. "I did not survive all this so you could stay stuck near me." "Go," I said. "Live loudly." He exhaled. "I will visit often." "No." After the call, I sat alone, listening to the river in the distance. For the first time solitude felt chosen, not forced. And as summer turned toward fall, I sensed something else approaching. Not fear. Not regret. But a reckoning of a different kind. Because the truth has a way of echoing. The letter arrived on a quiet Tuesday. Not the kind that announces itself with thick paper or official seals. Just a plain envelope, my name written carefully in blue ink, like the hand was trying not to shake. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Something in my chest recognized it before my mind did. "Elsbeth, I do not know if you will remember me. I am not sure I deserve to be remembered at all. But if you are willing, I need to ask you something I should have asked decades ago." The name at the bottom made my breath catch. Silas Crowder. I had not spoken that name out loud in more than 40 years. Silas had been a young man who worked on Bramwell's farm when I was newly married. Quiet. Awkward. He kept his eyes on the ground and his mouth shut. I remembered him because once, long ago, he had looked at me like he wanted to say something and did not. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. The old reflex stirred. Avoid. Delay. Protect yourself. But that reflex no longer ruled me. I wrote back the same day. "You may come on Thursday afternoon." He arrived just after 3. Silas was older now. His hair thin and gray. His shoulders rounded by years of labor. He stood on my porch with his hat in his hands, unsure where to put himself. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. He nodded. "Come in." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where Aldrich had learned to read. Where fear had once sat heavy between coffee cups. Silas cleared his throat. "I followed the news," he said. "About Bramwell. About you." I said nothing. I was there the night Hollis died, he said. The words landed softly, but they shook the room. My fingers curled around my teacup. Go on. I heard the argument, he said. I was in the barn. Heard shouting. Then a sound. Metal on bone. My heart pounded. Why are you here now? I asked. Because I have lived with that night every day since. Because I watched Bramwell walk away and I did nothing. His eyes filled. I was afraid. He owned my job, my home, my future. I nodded slowly. Fear makes cowards of good people. He looked up, surprised by my tone. I am not here to defend myself, he said quickly. I am here because I need to know something. I met his gaze. He swallowed. Did you hate me for staying silent? The question was not defensive. It was aching. Thought carefully. I did not hate you, I said. I did not have the energy. I was trying to survive. He closed his eyes. I should have spoken. Yes, I said gently. You should have. He flinched. But I also understand why you did not. He opened his eyes again, confusion and relief mixing together. You do. Leaned back. Silas, I spent years hating myself for staying quiet. If I cannot forgive others for the same fear, then I have learned nothing. Tears slipped down his cheeks. Thank you, he whispered. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote a statement, he said. About that night. About what I heard. I do not know if it is still needed. I took the paper. Truth is always needed, I said. Even when it comes late. After he left, I sat alone with his words spread out before me. They confirmed everything. And yet, what stirred inside me was not triumph. It was grief. Not just for Hollis, but for all the lives bent by one man's hunger for control. That evening I walked down to the river. The retreat was quiet that night. The women inside slept peacefully. I could hear soft laughter drifting from one room. Healing in motion. I sat on the bench and let the sound of water steady me. Forgiveness. The word had followed me like a shadow since Bramwell died. People spoke it to me as if it were an obligation. As if forgiving him was the final step to becoming whole. But standing there I understood something clearly. Forgiveness is not a doorway everyone must walk through. Sometimes peace comes from clarity. From naming what was wrong and refusing to carry it anymore. I did not forgive Bramwell. I released him. There is a difference. Weeks later, Silas's statement was added quietly to the record. No headlines. No drama. Just truth placed where it belonged. Aldrich called me that night. Mom, he said, I am proud of you. Smiled. I am proud of me too. And for the first time in my life, that did not feel like arrogance. Felt like arrival. But the past was not finished testing me. Because a few days later, someone else returned. Someone I had not expected. Someone whose forgiveness I wanted more than I was ready to admit. And that question would break me open in a way no accusation ever could. Her name was Delaney Thorne. I knew it the moment I saw it written on the visitor log at the retreat. My heart did something strange. Not pain. Not fear. Recognition. Delaney was Bramwell's granddaughter. The daughter of his estranged son. The one who left town at 17 and never looked back. I had seen her only once before, decades ago, when she was a child with wild curls and dirt on her knees, standing behind Bramwell's leg like a shield. I had not thought of her in years. Yet there her name was, written carefully, as if she had practiced it before arriving. I asked one of the volunteers to show her to the common room. When she walked in, I saw immediately that she carried her grandfather's sharp eyes but none of his hardness. She was in her early 40s, maybe, with a tired face that suggested she had lived fast and felt deeply. She stood when she saw me. Mrs. Crowley, she said. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I gestured for her to sit. You can call me Elsbeth. She hesitated, then sat. I do not know where to begin, she said. I folded my hands. Then begin with why you are here. She took a breath. My grandfather is dead. He nodded. No. I did not come to defend him, she said quickly. I came because I grew up with a version of him that did not match the stories coming out now. I watched her carefully. And because I need to know which version was real. I felt the old instinct rise. The one that wanted to protect. Soften. I let it pass. Both, I said. But the one that hurt people is the one that mattered most. She swallowed. He raised me for part of my childhood. After my father left. He was strict, cold. But he never touched me. Never yelled. I nodded slowly. Abuse wears many masks. She looked down at her hands. When the articles came out, my mother called me crying. She said she always knew something was wrong. That she left town because of it. Delaney looked up at me, eyes shining. I did not believe her at first. It was easier to believe the man who tucked me in than the woman who ran away. Her honesty startled me. I appreciate you saying that, I said. She leaned forward. I need to ask you something, and you do not owe me an answer. I waited. Do you think I am like him? The question cracked something open in me. I studied her face. The tension in her shoulders. The fear beneath her composure. No, I said without hesitation. She exhaled shakily. How can you be sure? 'Cause you are here, I said. He never came to ask who he was becoming. Tears slid down her cheeks. I have spent my whole life afraid there was something broken in me because of him. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. We do not inherit cruelty the way we inherit eye color. We choose who we become. She closed her eyes, pressing her lips together. I am sorry, she whispered. For what he did to you. To your family. He nodded. No. There it was. The forgiveness I never asked for. And I realized how badly I had needed it. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she asked about the retreat. About the women who stayed there. About why I chose to build something instead of burn something down. Because fire consumes the innocent too, I said. And I had already seen enough destruction. She smiled faintly. He would hate this place. Smiled back. That means we built it right. Before she left, Delaney stopped at the door. I do not want his name to follow me anymore, she said. I want to earn my own. You already are, I replied. After she left, I walked through the retreat slowly. I watched a woman in her 60s laugh quietly with another over tea. I watched someone younger sit by the window, breathing deeply, like the world had finally loosened its grip. That night I dreamed again. This time there was no barn, no river, just a door. Opened it. And on the other side was myself, younger, frightened, but standing. She looked at me and smiled. You came back, she said. I woke with tears on my pillow and peace in my chest. The next morning Aldrich called. Mom, he said, something happened. What is it? The pension investigation is complete. They are issuing a correction. Publicly. Clearing Dad's name. I sat down heavily. That matters, I whispered. Does, he said. And there is more. The state wants to recognize the retreat. They are offering funding. Expansion. Closed my eyes. All those years, silence felt like survival. Now truth felt like momentum. But endings rarely come without one final test. And as the retreat grew, as my story became something people referenced instead of whispered about, I felt it approaching. The moment when I would have to decide how visible I was willing to be. The invitation arrived in late autumn. Cream-colored envelope. Official seal. My name typed neatly across the front like it belonged somewhere important. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The State Committee on Community Healing and Senior Advocacy requests your presence and voice at the annual public forum. My hands trembled. They wanted me to speak publicly. Aldrich was thrilled when I told him. "Mom, this is huge," he said. "They want to hear from you. From someone who lived it." I smiled, but my chest felt tight. "I have lived my whole life not being heard," I said quietly. "Standing in front of a room full of people feels dangerous." He softened. "You do not owe them anything." I knew that. But I also knew something else. If I said no, fear would win one last time. The retreat had grown steadily. More rooms, more volunteers, more stories that sounded painfully familiar. Women in their 70s, in their 50s, even in their 30s. All carrying shame that did not belong to them. They saw me as brave. If only they knew. The night before the forum, I barely slept. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a blank page. I had been asked to prepare remarks. Speech. I laughed softly. For decades, I had survived by saying nothing. Now they wanted words. I did not write a speech. I wrote the truth. The next morning, Aldrich drove me to the city. The building was large, cold, glass and stone. Inside, people milled about with name tags and coffee cups. Professionals, advocates, politicians. I felt out of place in my sensible shoes and wool coat. Then a woman approached me. "Elsbeth Crowley," she said warmly. "We are honored to have you." Honored. The word felt heavy. When my name was called, my legs nearly gave out. I walked to the podium slowly. Every step echoed. I looked out at the room. So many faces. Some curious, some kind, some skeptical. Took a breath. "My name is Elsbeth Crowley," I said. "I am 78 years old. And for most of my life I was silent." The room stilled. I did not tell them everything. I did not need to. I spoke about fear, about power, about how silence is often mistaken for peace. I spoke about how long it takes to unlearn obedience to cruelty. And then I said the words that surprised even me. I am not brave because I spoke up late. I am brave because I survived long enough to speak at all. There was no applause at first. Just quiet. Then one person clapped. Then another. By the time I stepped down, the room was standing. Afterward, women approached me with tears in their eyes. Too. Some apologized for things they had never said aloud. A young reporter asked if she could interview me. Said yes. The article ran 2 weeks later. My face, name, my story, visible. The reaction was bigger than I expected. Letters poured in. Emails, phone calls. Some were grateful. Some were angry. One message read, "You should have stayed quiet. You are reopening wounds." I folded that letter carefully and placed it in my notebook. Some wounds need air to heal. The retreat received more funding, more attention. With visibility came criticism. People questioned my memory, my motives, my past. The old doubt crept in again. One night, I sat alone and wondered if Bramwell's shadow had simply taken a new shape. Then something happened that grounded me. A woman named Ruth arrived at the retreat with nothing but a suitcase and shaking hands. She was 82. "I thought it was too late for me," she said. I took her hand. "It is never too late to be safe." She stayed for 3 weeks. When she left, she hugged me tightly. "You saved my life," she said. I shook my head. "Oh, you saved yourself." I just held the door open. That night, I understood the cost of visibility. It asks more of you, but it also gives more back. Aldrich visited a month later. He looked at me with something like awe. "You changed things, Mom." I shook my head. Changed myself. As winter approached again, I felt something closing. Not fear. Completion. There was only one thing left to do. One final choice. Whether I would let my story belong to others, or finally let it belong to me. And that choice would shape the ending of this journey. The ending that comes next. The one where the grandmother does not just survive. She wins. Quietly. Fully. And on her own terms. I did not write a book. People kept asking me to. Publishers reached out through the committee. A young woman with careful words and sharp glasses sat at my kitchen table and told me my story could help thousands more if I put it on paper. I listened politely. Then I said no. She looked surprised. Do you not want your legacy preserved? She asked. Smiled. My legacy is already breathing. After everything that happened, people expected some grand final act from me. Lawsuit. Memoir. A public reckoning with Bramwell's name carved into history. But I had learned something important in my 78 years. Men like Bramwell want to be remembered. I did not need to give him that. Winter returned again, slower this time. The retreat stood firm against the cold. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Inside, women moved quietly through warm rooms, wrapped in blankets, wrapped in relief. I spent my days simply being there. Porty. I listened. I walked by the river when my joints allowed. I read aloud in the evenings sometimes, the way I once did at the library, my voice steady, my hands no longer shaking. One afternoon, Delaney returned. She stood by the river with me, hands in her coat pockets. I changed my last name, she said. I looked at her. I took my mother's maiden name. I needed distance. He nodded. Distance can be healing. She smiled. I wanted you to know that I am volunteering at a youth center now. Working with kids who feel invisible. I felt a deep warmth spread through me. That is how cycles end, I said. She hesitated. I still think about him sometimes. I placed my hand over hers. Thinking is not the same as carrying. She hugged me tightly before leaving. Later that evening, Aldrich called from his new home in another state. I could hear traffic in the background. Life moving forward. How are you feeling, Mom? He asked. I thought about it carefully. Whole, I said. He laughed softly. That is a good answer. I watched the snow fall outside my window after the call ended. Each flake landing gently, quietly, without asking permission. I thought about the young woman I once was. The one who believed love meant endurance. The one who thought silence was safety. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her something. You will not always be afraid. You will not always be quiet. And one day, the world will make room for your voice. But life does not allow messages backward. It only allows meaning forward. In early spring, the retreat held its first small gathering. No press. No officials. Just women who had passed through and wanted to return for a weekend of gratitude. We sat in a circle by the river. Someone asked me how I found the strength to keep going for so many years. I did not answer right away. Then I said the truth. I did not know I was strong. I was just unwilling to disappear. Silence settled over the group. Then one woman said quietly, "Me too." Another nodded. "Me too." I realized then that winning does not look like revenge. It looks like continuity. Like choosing life again and again, even when it would be easier to fold inward. A few weeks later, I visited Bramwell's grave. I had not planned to. My feet simply carried me there one afternoon when the sky was clear and the air smelled like thawing earth. The stone was simple. His name. His date. Nothing else. I stood there only a moment. "I am not here for you," I said softly. "I am here to mark that you no longer own any part of my life." Then I walked away. That was the end. Not with a speech. Not with a courtroom. But with my back turned and my future intact. Now, if you are still listening to me, sitting somewhere far away or maybe close by, let me say this to you. It is never too late to choose yourself. Not at 20. Not at 40. Not at 78. Silence may have kept you alive, but truth will help you live. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you do not miss more emotional and powerful stories like this one. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Which part of the country? Which corner of the world? You are not alone. And neither am I anymore.